So let's just take a moment. I'll just do a little bit of a motivation first before we chant refuge. So Namasya, I don't know if you caught that, but we're going to do the refuge prayer here. And then we're going to, Bay wanted to offer a mandala. So I don't have the prayer up this week. I'll make sure I have it on the screen for next week. But basically, have you offered like mandala before, Namasya? You've done that in a teaching or?
I've seen it be done, but
Anyway, it's just kind of an offering. We imagine offering the universe and all the contents of the universe, and just whatever we enjoy as well in a simple way. We offer it. We're going to do it in connection with Shakyamuni Buddha, and it just creates some auspiciousness, and creates some merit before you hear the teachings. But I'll have the prayer for us next week. So let's just take a moment to settle our minds. Bringing our using the breath just to do a quick scan of the body, just to kind of ground our mind and our awareness in the body from the crown all the way down to the toes, just doing a few rounds of breathing to scan and release and relax any tension in the body. And then just for a few minutes, bringing our awareness simply to the breath, the inhalation and exhalation at the tip of the nostrils, just being with that process of breathing in and out. And then just letting go of the awareness on the breath and taking a moment just to think about our motivation, form our motivation for listening to the class. So whatever comes up in your own mind first. So basically, and as an addition, it doesn't matter how many times we've heard the teachings. We always need to go back to the basics. We have to really get a deeper and deeper understanding of the nature of suffering, the kind of suffering or dissatisfactory situation we're in, this cycle of existence that we're in. We need to keep investigating and getting a clear sense of that. And as well as that, keeping inspiring ourselves with the suffering and dissatisfaction. And continuing to train and develop our mind, our potential for enlightenment on the path, by practicing the path. Because the power of delusion, the power of confusion, that's what delusions create, a deluded state of mind. They're very strong in the mind, so day to day, moment to moment, they're controlling our reality. So we have to continue to listen, reflect, and meditate on the teachings to get a sort of deeper and deeper understanding. So the four truths become our four inner truths. And that much we can develop our mind on the path. We also always motivate that much we be able to benefit others who are just like me. We're all under the control of suffering, karma, and delusion. And that brings a sense of closeness, a more kind of, we can relate to others more when we understand that just like me, all beings are controlled by delusion, controlled by suffering right now. But just like me, they have this kind of innate potential to liberate themselves. So we always have to try and have this Mahayana motivation that as much as I can understand and free myself, these inner delusions, disturbances of the mind, that much more may I be able to benefit others. To develop the skill, the wisdom, the ability, the power. And Buddha has a special power, power of speech, power of presence. May I gradually be able to develop that so I can, guide, inspire, and bring other beings into the spiritual path. Just kind of spontaneously, effortlessly, as we see in the example of our spiritual teachers, through the power of their prayers and practice over many lifetimes. Just their presence awakens our mind, has an impact on the mind just by thinking about them, seeing them, hearing some of their words, it has a very specific imprint in the mind. So may, I gradually be able to become like that as I develop my heart and mind on the path. And to further inspire us to purify and set the mind for the class, let's take a moment to imagine that we're in the presence of a clear blue sky. It's just, it's all around us. And from that sky, what we say appears the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, as we've seen the image here, made of radiant light. Just appears spontaneously as we think about him. And he's made predominantly golden light. And he embodies these qualities of fully developed wisdom and compassion. So he becomes our spiritual refuge, his presence, his teachings, and also the spiritual community who practice, who gradually develop on the path, become our refuge. We need each one of these to develop. We need to take an inner refuge in those, So we become the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha gradually. And we can also imagine our friends, our family, all beings, the different realms around us, seeking refuge, seeking spiritual protection, guidance, teachings, seeking eventually their qualities and realizations. And together we all chant the prayer, the refuge prayer. We can do one chant in English, two in Tibetan. O Sangye Chodan Sogi Chognama Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chen Sogi Be Sonamgi Jola penjir sange druparsho. Sange. Oh, sorry. Maybe one more in Tibetan. Sange chodan sogi chognamla. Chanchu bardu dagi kyapsuchi. Dagi chinso gebe sonamge. Jola penjir sange druparsho. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So as much as we can wholeheartedly, we take that form of refuge. And then we're going to chant the mandala offering. O Sajibo Shinnedo Ra Ingje Nye De Gyambadi Sangye Jindu Mete Jogu Namda Jinga Chuparsho Yedam Guru Ratna Mandala Kameya Dayani. So we feel whatever we visualized are offering to Buddha visually. And also, you can also imagine visualizing your body, your friends, things you're attached to is very helpful. And the Buddha accepts all our offerings with delight. And then from his holy body, we just do a few mantras to settle the mind, clarify the mind, and receive the blessing of Buddha's, Muni means sage, so we're inviting all the blessings of his body, speech, and mind into our body, speech, and mind to help set our mind, clarify our mind for the teachings. Oi taya ta oi minne Maha Minaye Soham Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soham Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soham Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soha Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soha Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soha Taya Taor Minne Soha Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soha Taya Taor Minne Maha Minaye Soha. So just feel the streams of nectar of Buddha's blessings, the body, speech, and mind, all his enlightened wisdom and compassion, all his power. It's a very powerful mind. The mind of bodhicitta, the mind of emptiness. So we receive those kind of powers or blessings. Of course, if we have a guru, we're receiving directly the guru's blessing. And the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, but in essence, our guru, blessing, purifying, opening our mind to be able to digest and hear the teachings more clearly. Okay. So, last week was a lot of suffering. This week is still the same, because we didn't finish the two, the first two truths. So I just want to go back to, just as a quick reminder, these are the four truths. As some of us know already quite well, the truth is suffering. So that's what we were talking about predominantly last week. The truth of the cause is suffering, the truth is cessation, and the truth of the path. Again, these are the first teachings that the Buddha taught after he achieved enlightenment. He taught the 5 ascetics in Varanasi, in Sarnath, because these are the sort of fundamental teachings that everything else sprouts for there, all the path, all the lam rim, everything comes because we have to recognize and realize these 4 truths. So they're all different methods for us. All the teachings, all the practices, they're all methods for us to get to this realization. And of course, in this path, in the Mahayana, we also have on top of that, the practice of, the 6 perfections and developing this kind of fully awakened mind of bodhicitta. But right now, we're looking specifically in the fundamentals that are, in all the traditions, whether we're Tibetan Buddhism, Theravadan Buddhism, all the different countries who study Buddhism, practice Buddhism, they're all trying to get the realizations of these 4 noble truths, holding the way expressing the 4 noble truths is through this verse here, as you can see, by Maitreya Buddha. So, of course, Maitreya Buddha hasn't descended into this world yet. We're currently teaching, practicing Shakyamuni Buddha's system of teachings. But Maitreya Buddha, this will be probably from a Sangha. There was certain beings who have pure karma can go up to the realm where Maitreya Buddha abides right now, where Shakyamuni Buddha was before he descended to Shita. And they can receive teachings from Maitreya Buddha. And so one was able to have the karma to see Maitreya Buddha and go to his realm and receive teachings, and he brought them back into this realm. So again, Maitreya Buddha sought he just expressed the 4 noble truths in a different way. Suffering is to be known. That's like the first one. There is suffering, so we have to know that. And then the cause, what is the cause? We need to know the cause, and that needs to be abandoned. That's what, just like anything, if we go, and I really, I always try and bring it back to basics as well, because it can get really complicated in a mind, but in another, fundamental way, using an example, if you go to the you have this kind of agitation, like we come to the teachings because we feel something's not right, there's something not right in our life. We bump up against some kind of suffering or problem that we can't just quite work out. So we think, okay, well, maybe it's something spiritual. So we go to, whatever reason, our karma ripens to go and hear the Buddha's teachings. So it's like that, it's like we have this ongoing toothache or something. It's kind of low level, but then we decide, I need to go and get something done about it. So we go to the dentist, and the dentist says, well, yeah, you have these, he'll actually say, well, you've got some kind of, you've got a broken tooth, then he'll start to say all the problems, because maybe we've had some things going on for a long time. So what he'll do, or like a doctor, they'll start to give you, first of all, maybe clarify what the symptoms of your problem is. We know a little bit because we can feel the pain. And like our mind is in the, while we're under the control of the ego, it's like we have this kind of painful mind, So we feel that, and then we go to the doctor, and they, clarify everything, and they say, yeah, these are your symptoms, so they clarify our symptoms. And then they tell us, well, you're having these problems because, for example, the dentist might say, well, you're not brushing your teeth properly. You're not, you're not flossing, you're not, you're eating the wrong foods, you're eating a lot of sugary foods, and you're not brushing at the right time. He gives all the reasons why you're having the problem. So that's the cause of suffering. That's why he's like, this is why you're suffering. And then he says, but actually you can heal all this. It's possible to completely heal all the problems you've got going on there. But you need to do, I need to give you medication, and you need to do, you need to abandon eating sugary foods, you need to floss at the right time, you need, you know, and then he tells you the path to get out of it that we need to practice. You know, so basically, this is like, again, looking at the Maitreya Buddha, Shakyamuni. First one is you're suffering. Second one is there is a cause. The third one is, but, you know, it's possible to really actually remove all the types of suffering and dissatisfaction we have in the mind. There is a, and then, you know, but in order to do that, you need to do, you know, all these different types of things. You need to practice the path. So actually, if we really think about it, when our mind's more kind of in this awakened state and we really get a good feeling of the Four Noble Truths in our mind, to me, it's almost like God. Because when you understand that you know, the more we understand that, gosh, just like me, you know, I have these different types of levels of suffering. It's like, my God, so does every single sentient being, you know. When we see even a small part that's a truth for us, it's like, you know, it's like, you know, of course, in Buddhism, we don't do that. We don't go out and knock on people's door and say, you know, I need to get a news channel and, you know, but in reality, I think when you have these kind of inner experience and realizations of that, it's almost like you want to tell the world, you know. But of course, not everybody has the karma for that. But this is kind of like, in reality, this is the only news there is. Because everything's coming from our mind. You know, all the wars, all the famine, all the disease and all that. Of course, on a conventional level, it's happening. But in reality, it's all coming from your mind. This is really what the Buddha's telling you. Every suffering, every experience, mental, physical, is everything's a result of your, you know, coming from our mind. There's nobody else it's coming from, you know. Yes, it's not that there's nothing that exists out there, but you know, our whole life is kind of a result of the level of our mind, what's going on in our mind. As we you know, really understand the Four Noble Truths more, that's what we discover, you know, is that the more we practice. So anyway, that's just another way of expressing in some level, you know, the Four Noble Truths, and how, you know, we kind of always try to remember to regard the teachings as medicine, and the doctor and the teacher is the kind of, you know, the Buddha and the teacher is a kind the healer, you know, healing this kind of ongoing problem that we're trying to get a handle on as we study the teachings. We're trying to really get a deeper handle on what's going on in my mind. And that's where we need to be curious. We need to keep purifying our mind, doing certain practices so that we understand more deeply that, you know, the kind of the whole problem, you know, the whole nature of the problem. Not to be depressed, but then we can say, okay, if I understand it really deeply, then I have definitely a deeper motivation to get out of it and a deeper motivation to do the practices. Otherwise, if we just think it's a kind of slight problem, light problem, you know, the motivation to get out will be lighter, you know. So certainly for myself, each time I study the Four Noble Truths and I really think about suffering a little bit more deeply, it does give me more inspiration, you know. I mean, I need to get out of this, you know. It's been how many lifetimes now? As the Buddha said, how many life? Are you not fed up yet? You know, I mean, the Buddhas must be looking at us and going, guys, you know. But they have so much compassion because they know it's tough for us. It's really tough to see these things. It's not easy to see them. It's not easy to think about them. But we have to do it, you know. And that's why we need the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We need a spiritual community who support us because you know, the problem's deep. The sickness is quite deep, you know. It's not incurable, but it's a tough one. And it's got a lot of layers. As we saw last week when we just went through more of the symptoms of suffering, like leaving this body, you know, what's the symptom of samsara? It's not the cause. The symptom is we get old. We get old because the symptom is we end up with this body that's in the nature of suffering. The symptom of samsara is we have to experience old age. We have to experience sickness. We have to experience death. That's like the doctor saying, you know, you've got pain here, you've got cracked tooth here, you've got a, you know, infection in the gum here. He's just telling you what's all the different things that's going on, what type of infection it is, because we didn't know, you know. How the tooth's broken. It's like last week we talked about the symptoms. We have to leave the body again and again. We have to take rebirth again and again. We don't know where we're going to get reborn. We have a continuity, consciousness, and experience that even by a nuclear bomb, you know, when people commit suicide, they just want it to stop, right? But it's not, it's unfortunate, it's not like that, It's very sad, because it doesn't stop there. That type of suffering stops, but another one's going to come, in future lives. It's not the solution. So, so last week was more about, what's really going on in my samsara? What are the symptoms of this thing, Birth, old age, sickness, and death are the big ones, That it's obvious we're going through that, but we don't, unless it's pointed out, we don't really think about it as a suffering. We just maybe think it's normal because everybody else is going through it, We don't have that awakened mind like the Buddha. When the Buddha was in the palace and he was constrained in the palace because he had a deep spiritual nature and his father wanted to not encourage that, he wanted to make sure he was going to be a king. So, but as soon as the Buddha, like, boom, I need to get out of this. He knew it was not normal. So it's kind of like we have to kind of always go there all the time and look in reality with this different mind. So the three, so just to sort of finish off with the different types of suffering, the main ones that Urs mentioned about last week, these are the kind of essence of the ones, really. The three main types that's really, really good. Yes, Namasya, do you have a question?
I do. So, the symptoms of suffering is the human rebirth and death and old age and such.
Yes.
So if you were to heal that, I mean, because that's also just the human experience, having a human body.
Yeah.
In order to, to heal that, to attain enlightenment, it would be to leave the human body altogether. So the human body is simply part of the suffering. Or I guess I'm just wondering if that's the symptom.
Yes. Yeah. Urs, you want to answer it? You want to try?
I mean, I guess that's probably the answer. But then if you look at, say, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has a human body. So I don't think he experienced the suffering the same way that we do. There must be a difference. I mean, even if these spiritual guides take human rebirth, it must feel different for them, I would think. I think we as ordinary beings, we experience suffering, but I don't know if they experience suffering or just in a different way, maybe.
So yes, thank you, Urs. I think, what the Buddha, I don't know if this is a different angle or it answers it, but what the Buddha showed us in the 12 deeds, when he comes into this world, because he came from a different realm, he already was a high-level bodhisattva, so he came for this realm called Tishita. But he came into this world to show one of the deeds that he shows, and all the Buddhas show, that actually we can get enlightened, and even though his body, you're from a type of rebirth where we don't have a suffering body. Yeah, we want to liberate ourselves from that. But when we go more into the stages of the path and we look at precious human rebirth, this is the best situation to get out of suffering, is to have this human rebirth. So the best thing you can have, because there's other realms of existence we can be born in. We can be born as animals, spirits, there's all these different realms. We're not going to go into too much, but basically, yes, on one side of the coin, this body is in the nature of suffering, right? So we need to look at that, because we don't want to keep getting a suffering body. We don't want to keep being born human. But on the other side of the coin, this is the best vessel to achieve enlightenment. So to get out of suffering, what you actually want to do is be born as a human, to be born with a human body with, with an aptitude and a wish, a hunger for spiritual teachings, and to meet the Dharma. And then on the basis of having this human body, you can get yourself out of rebirth altogether and no longer coming back with a suffering body. So it's like And, you know, yes, we have the suffering. On one side, we have to recognize this body's not, it's not tops, you know. But on the other side, it's incredible to have it because we can use it, we utilize it to get enlightened. It's the best vessel. Does that answer your question, Amasia?
Yeah.
And also, you know, when Urs mentioned the His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, of course, if you really read about, you know, there's an incredible book on the 14 lives of the Dalai Lama, the 14 Dalai Lamas. And there's many books on the stories of the Dalai Lamas, but there's really a nice one on the 14 lives, you know, and so His Holiness is already regarded as an emanation of like Chenrezig, you know, Avalokiteshvara. So as Urs said, you know, in reality, he's not going to get reborn in samsara after this. Like he didn't even need to, you know, we would say a high-level bodhisattva, Buddha, they don't even need to come in as a human. You know, they're finished for that, you know. But to benefit us, you know, we can't see them up in these other realms of Tushita and all the Pure Land, so they need to come back in this body. You need to come in a human form where we can see them, where we can relate to them, and where we can receive teachings.
Yeah, because I guess the Bodhisattva path, you come back in a human body, right? To
Yeah.
help others, and you kind of stay until everybody's achieved enlightenment, correct?
Yeah. And you can manifest in different forms. You know, there's stories of the Buddha in the previous lives manifesting as animals in the Jataka tales. You know, he manifested as animals to benefit animals. You can manifest as a spirit because there might be some opportunity to guide a spirit, just in even small way, you know. So once you're enlightened, you can manifest in any way. But, you know, mostly, certainly in this realm, they manifest as humans, because if they manifest as an animal, I mean, how are we going to communicate with them, you know? How are they going to teach us? So that's obviously, they need to manifest like that, although they can. There's stories, His Holiness manifesting as a dog. Some people, you know, had this, there was a story of His Holiness when they were trying, you know, when they first came over as refugees to India. Maybe Bay or Urs have heard this story before. But there was one story, since we're on that topic of manifesting, there's one story of His Holiness when you know, when they first came over from India, of course, you know, the monks were staying in refugee camps sorry, I keep getting this. They were staying in refugee camps. And, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, a lot of these great lamas and geshis had to stay in an ex-concentration camp called Bugsa in South India. It was really intense, you know. It used to be, but, you know, it was no longer a concentration camp. It was a prison where they held Gandhi, the Brits held Gandhi during the, you know, during the time that the British were ruling India. And they imprisoned Gandhi and Nehru in these places. So, but you know, they allowed the Tibetans to come in, but they didn't have a place to put them. And of course, India is a poor country, so they put them in these concentration camps, extra prisons. They weren't prisoners, but it was the only place to house them. And so eventually, His Holiness was able to, you know, get some, you know, the Indian government were trying to give some land so that they could build monasteries, you know, actually build places. So His Holiness was in a lot of discussion, you know, with the government and the, you know, local governors and whatever. So, and, you know, to get land in India is very complicated. You know, it's not an easy, you know, one of His Holiness's representatives had been down in South India, and he was trying to work with a local governor because His Holiness had been given the land by the main government, but the local governor, you know, you need to pay backsheesh, you need to do all these things, you know, you need to give them money. There's just so much corruption. So His Holiness had sent one of his representatives down to South India and said, you know, you need to go and speak to this person and do, because I have actually been given the land, but you need to discuss with this local governor. So he went down there, and there was just he didn't get any appointment. He never got in, you know. So you know, His Holiness assistant went back up to His Holiness in North India, back and forth. It's a big you know, a big journey. And he said to His Holiness, no, I can't even get to speak to the governor. There's no possible way, you know. So, but His Holiness was really determined, says, you need to go back down there again and, you know, speak to the governor, you know. So he went back down, and then he heard that he heard that he likes Tibetan dog, he likes these types of dogs, you know. So then somehow the governor had some idea about wanting to, he thought, okay, maybe I need to give him a gift or something. And he thought about maybe I need to find a dog. And as he was having this thought, he was just kind of walking along the street, and all of a sudden he saw this kind of sadhu or somebody with a small Tibetan terrier. And he decided maybe I'll try and, access something off this, I think it was a sadhu who just kind of appeared somehow. And then he went into the office, and somehow he managed this time to get an appointment with the governor, and he had the little Tibetan dog. And as soon as the Tibetan dog went into the office and he saw the governor, he went up to the governor and licked his feet, like jumping up, and he loved him and all that. And the governor just sort of fell in love with him and basically granted him the land, So that somehow this, this representative, His Holiness, because the first time he went down, absolutely nothing. And then His Holiness was like, no, you need to go down again. And there was some sort of shift, and he got some sort of clarity, and all these things just happened where he was just able to do that, So I feel that His Holiness manifested as a dog, the owner and the dog, because the dog immediately went up and just licked the feet. He just loved the governor, and the governor just fell in love with him, and that was it, So it kind of softened him up, and that's kind of how you have to operate a little bit in India anyway, because there's so much corruption. So anyway, that was just a wee story there. I kind of like that story, So that's just in terms of, so, when our mind's fully developed, we can manifest in many, many ways to benefit beings, But until we get to that state, as we say, we need to kind of really get a good oversight of what's going on. So we get and with that oversight, it gives a deeper and deeper wish and aspiration to get out of it, and practice the path, the complete path.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. So yeah, 3 types of suffering. These are the main ones that.
Can I ask a question?
These ones are kind of always happening, to us. These are pervading our experience in a way. So the first one, and they go from gross to subtle.
Sorry, Angie.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Bea, yeah.
Since we were talking about the realm, I had this debate with a Dhamma friend whether it's better to be born as a human, to be reborn as a human, or reborn in Pure Land. And I'm not really clear.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It depends. I don't think there's a clear answer to that. It depends on your own karma and your wishes and aspirations. I think the main thing I would say, is wherever you can develop bodhicitta and achieve enlightenment quicker, that's where you want to be born. So one time, a good Dharma friend of mine, Venerable Yarpel, I don't know if you've ever met him, John Jackson, he's more known of. He was one of the founders of Vajrapani, and he's currently does a lot of retreat in Rinpoche's retreat place in Washington. He's ordained. And he asked Rinpoche asked him one time, where would you like to be reborn? And of course, it's like, and he said, wherever's most beneficial for sentient beings. Rather than, I want to go to Pure Land, or I want to do this. So I think that's kind of the bodhisattva attitude, once you really understand the nature of samsara and you start to develop some bodhicitta. And as we see in Rinpoche's example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's example, his whole life is just about others, So I think once you have a realization of emptiness and you start to develop bodhicitta, or even conventional bodhicitta, I think your karma will take you wherever you're most beneficial, whether it's a Pure Land. There won't be so much grasping it. Oh, I want to go to a Pure Land and do. Maybe your karma is to finish to develop bodhicitta more quickly in the human realm, because there's more suffering. Or maybe your karma is you've had a very deep experience of emptiness, so then you go to the Pure Lands and you develop that more deeply. And, so I don't know, maybe some of these bodhisattvas go back and forward between the Pure Lands and the human realm. It's at my level, it's hard to say, but I think it's about, may I just be, reborn where really, as Cadrilla even said in her past teaching, you know, if you realize emptiness first, it's very quick, you can develop bodhicitta much more quickly because you can see all beings are suffering. You see all the different levels of suffering. Right now, going into that question and that topic, you know, here right now, what do we have? The first type is suffering, the suffering is suffering. So this is what we can see day to day, you know, easy, the gross one. Nobody wants to be, everybody's trying to avoid heat, extreme heat or cold, hunger, thirst. I mean, we have to eat, we have to drink because we experience hunger and thirst and heat and cold. So we're always, the animals are doing that all. I mean, the animals' life is just, that's all they do, you know. I mean, of course they have moments of affection and they love their, you know, they take care of their children, you know, their babies and, you know, mothers. But, you know, a lot of the time they have to hunt and do all these different things, you know. I mean, so animals are doing that. And, you know, on a very basic level, we're doing that most of the day, you know. And also we have the suffering of fear and, you know, fear and anxiety going on. You know, the mental suffering, that's quite a strong one, you know, that's also going on of not having wealth, you finding wealth, holding on to our wealth, you know, having friends, having status, you know, these kinds of things, you know, are what we sort of grosser things that we can see that cause anxiety and dissatisfaction and difficulties in the mind. So that's kind of what we are dealing with. These are all kind of the grosser levels, because the more deeper and subtler levels are always there. They're just a manifestation of the you know, what's going on a deeper level. So here we go for gross to subtle, because so does anybody have a struggle or a question with that? Like, again, we're just sort of getting a bigger, excuse me, diagnosis of the nature of suffering here, you know, nature of samsara for ourselves. That actually heat, cold, hunger and thirst are kind of uncomfortable states that we're kind of always trying to alleviate on a day-to-day basis. Then the next one that's more subtle that we don't recognize, but it's there, and we don't necessarily see it as which again, Urs was talking about these last week. Urs mentioned these. So the Buddha would actually say all of their pleasures right now, good food, sunbathing, sport, you know, trying to get more wealth, even though they appear to be like happiness, what we label as happiness or pleasure, if we have the kind of more investigative look at them, they turn into pain. You know, so it's, you know, because again, I've touched on this last week, you know, we enjoy a nice meal. And, you know, even though for some of us here, you know, 2 or 3 years, we've heard this before, this is something we actually need to keep reflecting and meditating on, because it starts to build this aversion or, you know, less appetite for those things. At our point, we just want to have less appetite for that, spend less time on that at least, because we know it's not bringing about any level of deeper inner peace and happiness. And actually, it just, you know, they result in suffering. So, you know, the best example is this chocolate cake example that we enjoy the first mouthful, it's like bliss, or whatever, you know, is your favorite food, pizza, popcorn. The first couple of mouthfuls are like, wow, this is great. But then after a while, the popcorn, we don't taste it as well. It starts to be more salty or more sweet, more gross. And then, you know, then also we get more full if we eat too much. So, you know, in a really kind of clean, clear level, what happens is when we have the suffering of being hungry, you know, craving, then we have the delicious food. But then very quickly, as Rinpoche always talked about this a lot, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, that experience of enjoying it, you know, first of all, the taste, we don't taste it as much after a few bites, you know, it becomes less flavorful. And then we start to experience what Rinpoche says, the suffering of discomfort in the stomach. You know, it's the same with playing sport. It feels good initially, but then we start to get some pain in the body, some discomfort. you know, and eventually if we kept doing that, I mean, it would be, you know, we would be exhausted, our the body would be in pain, you know, we get aches and pains and everything. Sunbathing's a really good example. In the beginning, it feels nice, the sun on our body. But if we sit in the sun too long, we burn our body, it becomes very it becomes in the nature of suffering. So basically, what the Buddha's point here is, the key point is, if these pleasures were of the nature of happiness, if they actually are brought about happiness, the more we engaged in them, the more happiness, we would be blissed out. If the nature of chocolate cake was happiness, the more we took it, we would get more, you know, if something's from its own side, happiness, then the more we take of it, we should be happy, happy, happy. We should be filled up with bliss. But we just get filled up with like, well, we know we get filled up with, you know? So if it was from its own side pure happiness, then we would have just experienced more happiness and joy from that. We'd be so joyful with all that chocolate cake. We would be so joyful with all that sunbathing, with all that partying, whatever it is, you know, all these different, what we call samsaric pleasures. So that's a kind of meditation that needs to take a little bit time to think about. Namasia, what do you think about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Yeah. So again, it's what Lama Yeshe says. We have to, with all these things, we always have to check up and think about it more deeply, because it makes us less interested in those things. It doesn't mean we stop eating and all that, you know, but it helps to reduce our attachment. Because as Rinpoche says as well, we're not able, those sense objects from their own side aren't able to bring about satisfaction. And we can see that when people have get too much wealth and they don't have enough kind of spiritual life or spiritual understanding, that wealth just creates a lot of pain for them. They just engage more and more in samsaric pleasures, and you know, their life becomes more confusing and more painful. At least if you don't have so much money, you can't partake in a lot of these, and in some level it's it can be a blessing, you know. I mean, that's not the solution, just to not to have any money so you don't have them. It's not the answer, but we can see that people with more simple lives, as ourselves, you know, we try to live more simply and the life's less complicated, you know. So we see in the, you know, very easily in the world, stars and people with money can create so much suffering and problem in themselves when they get lots of money and they just engage more heavily in samsaric pleasures. The mind just becomes more and more heavy, more and more suffering. So that's what the Buddha was saying on that level of suffering of change. So that's the kind of, the first one's the gross one. This is a little bit more subtle, but again, really to think about that more. And then this is the harder one that you mentioned last week as well, Urs, all pervasive suffering. How, as it says here, can you read that? Or is the view of us covering some of the letters there? Can you read it? Oh, that's it. Maybe there?
Yeah, we can read it.
Oh, you can read it. Okay. Okay, so the all-pervasive suffering, so this is the one that we really need to we do really need often more purification or more insight and study and, you know, really thinking about the Buddha's teachings more to get, not just to understand it intellectually, to get really some feeling of this, because this is where the feeling of renunciation comes. This is what we have to renounce or give up, or basically really see in our own experience and then want to get free from. Renunciation is really seeing clear our suffering situation and then thinking, wow, I need to get out of that. That's what liberation is. It's like, that's what renunciation is. Developing this kind of strong wish on the basis of getting clear about our own suffering situation, our own internal process of what's going on in our mind. And then thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get out of this. Just like a prisoner wants to get out of jail. He didn't really, somebody who didn't really realize they were in some deep situation. And it's like, gosh, this is really suffering. And then, getting this wish, this strong wish to get out of it and spending your, dedicating, you know, like your life or whatever you can, your practice to get out, you know, creating the causes to get out of it. So this is the main one we need to recognise. So the aggregates, the components that make up our sense of self, form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are simply, you know, on a simple level, because this is a simple class, simple in a way, but these are very, very profound concepts, you know. I mean, it's not easy. It sounds easy, but it's not an easy thing to get out of. A human being, what we are made, our components are basically our body and mind, you know. That's what we're made up of. And within the mind, there's feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, which is karma and imprints, and consciousness. That's just what's going on with us all the time. Our components, our aggregates, that's what we're made up of as a living being. Humans, animals, all beings possess 5 aggregates, 5 components, which again can be simplified into body and mind. And right now, they are pervaded by suffering. Our consciousness, our mind and body. So we can see our body's pervaded by suffering because it's under the control of birth and death, right? It's under the control of aging and sickness. Our mind was more difficult to see, but our mind is also, you know, pervaded by suffering. As we see a little bit, you know, anxiety, fear, these type of things that go on, you know, attachment, anger, these things are pervading our mind. Karma and delusion right now are these are the main causes of suffering, that which we'll go into a little bit more. They are pervading our 5 aggregates. Like when you get enlightened, you have 5 aggregates. You don't, it's not like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, you know. We always have 5 aggregates. But a Buddha's 5 aggregates are pure. His body and mind are completely purified and completely developed. Ours are undeveloped. So what we're trying to do is transform, purify and transform our aggregates, body and mind, feeling, discrimination, all these into that of a Buddha, fully awakened state. So, and because every being has this stream of beginningless mind, consciousness, that is indestructible. It's just there whether we like it or not. You know, it's who we are. It's our essential nature. That is like a field planted with the seeds. Right now, it's like a field experience, you know, thoughts, emotions, feelings, cognition, all these things going on. It's our field of experience. That's going, you know, from life to life, but we've planted seeds of delusion and karma in there. And that's what's moving from life to life, as we saw in the Wheel of Life. We can go back to that in a little bit later. So that's what we're trying to remove, these seeds of karma and delusion, you know. But the potential is within us, because we have, you know, this potential of becoming fully purified, as in the example of the Buddha. So to be able to really see this level of contamination is quite difficult. So we go step by step through the path to understand the different layers and levels of delusion. So, you know, just to get another idea, you know, if we go to the most peaceful places, such as a retreat center, and, you know, just to show kind of how it's not easy to, or how, you know, the mind is disturbed, you know. So maybe we think we're okay, but, you know, even if we go a faraway place, oh, I'm going to go and do retreat, I'm going to be in silence. But the potential for agitation in the mind, the pain in the mind is always there. The karma and delusions are always present. So samsara, you know, the cycle of birth and death, samsara, it's not something external, it's something within ourselves. So it doesn't matter where we go, we take it with us. We can't escape it by running to the top of a mountain. You know, I'm going to go off and do retreat and run to the top of the mountain, then I'll be free of samsara. No. And that's what we often feel in the early days, like samsara is something separate, something kind of, you know, oh, if I go, you know, okay, I'm pure and holy, so I'm not going to go to discos and bars and all that, because there's samsara. Actually, if you're a holy being, you can be anywhere and you're not in samsara, you know. They talk about these great yogis one great yogin, his name was Sahara, you know, he was, you know, of course he spent years in meditation up in retreat. And then when he achieved all the realizations, he went to a sort of local winery. I mean, this is way back in India in the ancient times, you know. And to celebrate his enlightenment, he went and drank wine from sunset to sunrise, you know, because he could, because his mind was fully developed. So nothing can affect the mind at that level. But yeah, it's true for us as monastics. We don't hang out in bars, you know, we don't drink, we don't, you know, engage in sexual activity because we don't have the power of mind to transform that, you know. So we have to protect our mind at our level. But ultimately, there's nowhere in this realm, once you're free from samsara, that creates any danger to your mind, because samsara is our internal, what's going on internally. And it's also really good, I find that really good to help remind myself, because it does almost feel like, oh, this is samsaric out there, that's samsaric out there. No, the only thing that's samsaric is our own mind, you know. Samsara is not defined by a place, it's defined by our state of consciousness, what state of consciousness we are in. And we are in suffering of change, and all perceive as suffering. That's what we are under the control of right now. That's our samsaric experience. So the deeper we reflect and meditate on these and recognize them to be true for us, the deeper our conviction to find inner peace and happiness, which is renunciation, that wish to be free for these, and also to achieve everlasting peace and happiness. That's kind of what the mind of renunciation is. Does anyone have any questions or anything to add to that? Any comments? Kenan, you still there? Kenan, is he there? Did he leave? He's not there, no?
He dropped off.
Okay.
I think sometimes he has to go to work.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, these are, this is what's going on there. So, yeah, so this is just, again, you know, getting an overview of what's going on in samsara. So just to add to that, another level of kind of challenge that we're under is this impermanence, which again, you know, yourself and Bay know about. So also in sense objects, they come about due to causes and conditions are in the nature of change and impermanence, meaning they get older moment by moment, degenerate and perish. Nothing lasts, especially our body and lives. So, yeah, this is another aspect to being in samsara, you know, that everything's changing all the time. There's nothing, you know, and also all the samsaric pleasures we have are all in the nature of change and impermanence. They don't last. And especially our body, you know, it's changing moment to moment. And it's changing in a way where it's decaying moment by moment. It's degenerating and perishing moment by moment. So in contrast to the everlasting, you know, what that is our potential to have, you know, nothing, you know, our families, our situation, we have to leave people, we'll have to leave our bodies again and again. So this is another one of the, what we call the disadvantages and the drawbacks of samsara, is that we can never hold on to anything. We can never hold on to a sort of permanent happiness and say, this is it. Because anyway, it's in the nature of something, suffering, and anyway, it's always going to change. So not realizing that as well, not being in touch with the nature and the impermanent nature of samsara, we do experience a lot of pain and frustration. So an example is, you know, when we look at, you know, we've got our own life experience, but when we look at people like, I mean, I really feel like Michael Jackson, Madonna, I mean, these people really suffer, you know, their life, especially like Madonna, you know, I don't know if you've seen it. We know who Madonna is. Anybody not know who Madonna is? Because I was brought up in the 70s, 80s, so she was like a big singer at that time, you know, she was really famous. And I'm going to show this beauty and sex appeal and all these things, you know, but, you know, now to hold on to that view of herself, she's had so much plastic surgery, it's so painful to look at. I mean, she doesn't look real. as that happened to Michael Jackson, yeah? And it's not to be judgmental, it's just, I feel like, wow, that's so painful that you have to, you have to do all this to yourself because you're trying to hold on to this view of yourself being young. And we're not really touching base with really the nature of reality. And of course, we're just trying to evade suffering, we're not even trying, there's no even kind of any sense of what's really going on here in our experience. So anyway, yeah, this is because we have a day-to-day hallucination that things are permanent and solid. The fact that things are impermanent and we're not in touch with that can cause a lot of pain and frustration in our life, especially when we have a lot of sudden change in our life. Something sudden out of the blue happens that we really didn't expect, especially like deaths in families or, sickness ourselves, these things that we're not kind of really thinking that's going to happen in any way, they suddenly happen, and it can cause, a lot of pain and frustration in life. And we've probably all been through that in some form or other, either personally or within our, family and community. So as it says here in the Vajrakatta Sutra, the last verse of the Vajrakatta, this is how we have to really try and see phenomena like this. Then we can, the more we're in touch with the impermanent nature of things, the more we're able to reduce our suffering and which comes mostly out of attachment and expectation. From the Vajrakatta Sutra, it says a star, a defective view, a butterfly flame, an illusion, a dewdrop, water bubble, dream, lightning, cloud, see all caused a phenomena like this. When Lama Zopa Rinpoche, this is also at the end of when we do the preliminary teachings at the start of a teaching event with a Lama, we usually do the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. So you probably recognize B and Urs, this verse from there. That verse and try and meditate a little bit. It's really trying to get this feeling our life being like a dream. Not that we still have to engage and, create action and do things, but to kind of see that it has this dreamlike quality. To see that our life is like lightning, all our life so far has went like, when we look back, especially as we get older, it really feels like a dream, Or it really feels like a flash of lightning the older you get. It just feels like, where did all, hello? Where did all that go, Isn't it, as you get older? I'm looking at Urs. Because we're probably the two older ones here, so it's kind of like frightening in a way, yeah? So there is an analogy of life in one of the sutras or the Lamrim text, I think it is. When we look at life, it's like a waterfall. When the waterfall first comes off the top of the precipice, it's kind of slower, but as it goes down, 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 down very fast, it speeds up, And then when it hits, it's at this really strong speed. So it's like we say our life, we sometimes meditate on that, like our life being like a waterfall. When we're born, there's, life tends to go a bit slower in your teens and then in 20s, 30s, 40s. So we look at life like that. And as we get to the very end of our life, as it hits the water or wherever it's going to hit, it's just going so fast. Our life just goes so quickly, the last part of your life. So life is like that. It goes faster and faster as we move through life, changing and changing more quickly. I find that quite an effective meditation when I'm in retreat, to think about life like that. And I mean, if the point of thinking again about impermanence is to reduce the mind of attachment, and it's also it also, as we see when we go through maybe the Lamrim Discovering Buddhism, it gives a lot of inspiration to really, make every moment meaningful, because it's life's slipping away. So again, in the light of the Vajrakatta Sutra, this verse, somehow, moment to moment, and again, we have this feeling because of the power of delusion that things feel very concrete, but when we just go a little bit below the surface of our projections and investigate just a little bit, meditate just a little bit on these analogies, we can see, oh, wait a minute, how I'm feeling and thinking about things on a day-to-day basis. It's not, it's not concurrent with how things really are. I feel things are permanent, solid, and concrete as myself, things out there, phenomena. But as soon as we do a bit of investigation or a bit of analysis, analytical meditation, it's actually not true. It's just not true how things are appearing to our mind. But if we don't do that, we just go along with whatever's appearing to the mind, you know. They're real, this is real, this is going to, you know, we have this deep feeling of permanence. Don't we? Would you agree, Namasia? I mean, in Western society, we talk about permanent jobs, permanent this, we're going to be married forever, we're going to be this forever. We know, I mean, even though in some part of us we feel like we're going to die, but it's kind of far away. And again, I know we've heard this before, but you know, unless we kind of really reflect and meditate and remind ourselves of impermanence, the feeling of permanence is much stronger. The concept of permanence is very strong in the mind. Talking from my own experience. Unless I do reflection and meditation and impermanence and death, the concept of permanence and solidity and concreteness is very, very strong, you know. So we have to kind of keep working, you know, using meditation to kind of, you know, thin that out, layer that out, and you know, and not just kind of blindly believe in it and go with that feeling. Okay, so is that the one we're on, this one? Okay, sorry, there's a lot of lists. Really what this is for me is just my bullet points. Because if I'm doing Zoom and then I have to look at my own notes and then look over I mean, it's too much, you know. I tried that last week and I just felt totally discombobulated, you know. So you're just getting my notes, you know. And anyway, I guess it's helpful for you, you know, you read this and this is good, but I hadn't really taught anything before on Zoom. I mean, I've led practices, but you know, teaching on Zoom's it's a whole other thing, you know. So so have you done teaching on Zoom, Namasia? Did you have to do that during the pandemic?
Yeah, we had to go. I had to try teaching kindergartners on Zoom. It was horrible. Yeah.
I
Just
can't
blank
imagine.
faces and, you know, it was like, no.
And
I understand.
sitting there, you know, the parents have to keep them there. So I have to say last week was a bit like, anyway, I've just started sort of teaching and then I was doing it on Zoom and I'm like, I don't know who's coming and I don't know. So it was all like, oh my God, you know, and then I had my notes here and then had a few things and I'm like, oh God, I just felt quite discombobulated with the whole thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it this way this week. Just have my notes there and, you know, we can all look at the notes and it's not too lengthy, you know, try and keep it at nice bullet points.
Yeah, I think it's good. You get to hear it and see it at the
Yeah,
same time.
exactly. Yeah. And it's not like hopefully too long, you know, but it's enough for me to get a catch what I'm trying to say and then for you to kind of just read it over as well and digest it a bit more as well. I mean, it's always all these different tools help us to get it, you know, to try and retain it in the mind at this point, you know, to get some feeling of it and retention in the mind. So the true causes of suffering. Yeah. So this one was what we just covered there was the first noble truth. More of the symptoms, you know, like being born again and again, you know, being in the cycle all over the time, you know, having to leave people all the time, you know, we always have to part, everything's in the nature of impermanence, so nothing lasts. And, you know, those three main, I mean, certainly when I first met the teachings, the ones that really stuck out for me were the three main ones, you know, the three different types of suffering. I thought I need to really try and understand them more deeply in my experience, if this is what the Buddha is saying, you know. So those three we just went over, I felt like I need to feel like, is that really true for me? And then if that's true for me, then I can see, okay, well, why is that happening? Why are all my experiences in life ultimately contaminated by suffering? Why is nothing really bringing about any deep feeling of satisfaction in my life? What's causing that? You know, why am I floating from one thing to the next to find happiness and satisfaction, but it's not really, it's not, you know, I'm not getting that, you know, nothing's really bringing about that sense of satisfaction. Of course, I was young, I was in my 20s, so I was, you know, doing loads of different things to try and find satisfaction. Of course, some of us, as we grow older, we do feel satisfaction in teaching and helping others and, you know, in our job, in our work life. But in a level, there's still a dissatisfaction with that, you know, if we really check up. Because, as the Buddha said, we're under the control of karma and delusion. So the second noble truth, the truth of the cause of suffering, our minds have been deceiving us from beginningless time, and our true enemies do not exist out there, but are within our own minds, karma and delusion. So we already touched on that. Again, these all kind of flow into each other as we're talking about them. The Four Noble Truths all flow in together. So we already talked about, and you already mentioned the two main causes, which of course those of us, Urs and Bay, know about those already, karma and delusion. And this pure, clear, knowing nature, this seed of enlightenment, Buddha nature, this potential, there's different ways this clarity of consciousness that moves from life to life. Go back to that state at the time of death. But as we progress into future lives, the power of karma and delusion ripen again in the mind, you know, they force us into another rebirth. But clouds, like clouds on the sky, you know, if they're crystal clear, luminous, pure mind, these two main causes, karma and delusion, pervade our experience right now. So we're not able to, you know, see reality of ourselves and reality of our situation and the reality of other situations clear right now, because we have these delusory states of mind. So just to go back, maybe just for the sake of Namasya, you know, like how do they look like in the real experiences being caused by, no, is it being affected by the main mental afflictions of ignorance, attachment, and anger, which motivate our actions and create contaminated results. So if we go back to the Wheel of Life that we had last week, on this picture format, where the in here, Carmen, the delusions, because actually without the delusions we wouldn't create karma. Oh, what happened there? Sorry. So without delusions we wouldn't create karma, you know. So here the two main causes, which so maybe Bay or Urs, what's going on here in the middle? You want to explain? Bay, your turn this time. Bay, you feel comfortable?
I actually can't. Is that a snake?
Pig?
Kind of hard to see. I forgot. Is it a snake and a pig?
Snake, pig, and what's the other one, Urs?
The chicken?
Is it a rooster or something like that? A
Yeah,
bird.
I mean, sometimes it's called a pigeon.
Oh,
You
pigeon.
know, it's actually, I think it's there as a pigeon. Sometimes they say a chicken, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche clarified one time in a teaching it's a pigeon.
Mm.
So what you can see there, have you seen this? I mean, you'll have seen this before, Namasya, yeah, this image. So, you know, because, you know, this is the hub of the wheel. So, of course, everything, the wheel turns because, you know, based on this hub, you know, so this is where the hub of the problem is, you know, the delusions. So what one is signifying ignorance? What one of these animals?
I think the pig is ignorance.
Yeah, so the pig is what is signifying our ignorant mind, you know?
Yeah.
And so what you can see here is what the pig is doing is he's holding, or from the pig, he's holding the tail of the pigeon and the snake, because from the pig of ignorance comes the two other delusions, which one does the pigeon signify? Bay? No?
No, I forgot. Is it like
Oh,
the
that's okay. Yours?
the aversion or
I don't know, anger or attachment, one of
Yeah, yeah. So
right?
actually, anyway, you know what they are, you know. So
Right.
yeah, usually, so you know, a snake is more related to sort of aversion, you know, anger, aversion, you know, being kind of really angry or, you know, having the mind of aversion. And this is a pigeon because Rinpoche says a pigeon is one of the animals that mates the most. Like they have sex all the time, you know. So it's like showing this mind of strong attachment. So what this is showing us, you know, like the pig is signifying our mind of ignorance that doesn't see phenomena. It doesn't see the nature of ourself, how we really exist, how ourselves and others exist. It clouds our mind. Ignorance, the strong delusion of ignorance clouds the mind like dust on a mirror. And due to ignorance, because we perceive the wrong view of self, from that wrong view comes attachment to our, you know, anger, attachment to, like we perceive a truly existent self, and due to that, we get attached to that sense of self. The feelings of attachment come, and also the feeling of aversion. Anger and aversion come because we feel a very strong, independent sense of self, and we try to protect that all the time. And we think protecting it, the best way is to have anger, and, you know, then we get attachment and aversion, you know. So these are the three main, there's other delusions that pervade the mind, as we know, like pride and miserliness, doubt, wrong type of doubt, there's many different types of delusions. But the two main ones where everything spring from is ignorance and then attachment and aversion. It's quite nice to know this because, you know, I remember sometimes when people come, certainly to the centre and everything, they find it quite helpful. I mean, it was the Buddha that actually said when he was in this world, you know, he asked one of his disciples to draw this image and always have it so that people would see it when they were coming in and start to get an understanding of the nature of samsara that we're in. Because the whole purpose of entering the Gompa is to, you know, enter into a place where we're going to listen to teachings to liberate us from samsara. So it reminds us of our samsaric state in this very visual form, you know, which, you know, as a teacher and a master, it's really helpful to have visual forms, you know, to learn. So this is what the hub is here. And then these aspects here, in terms of the truth of suffering, this is showing karma. Karma in a way. I'm not going to go into these links to depend, that's much more complicated. But in a simple way, you know, we have the wheel here, and then because of these delusions that are present in the mind, these disturbed states of mind, we create negative karma. This is the black side that brings us down to the lower realms, which we see here, the lower realms of existence, the animals, the here. So the wheel's turning down when it's going down, when we're creating black or heavy karma, like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, all these types of karma that are dark, we call dark karma, it creates the cause for lower rebirth, brings us down here. When we create good karma, like, you know, saving life, practicing generosity, being kind, you know, good speech, having good right speech, you know, right livelihood, these, you know, positive states, they're still contaminated by delusion. They're still contaminated by ignorance, but they create a good future rebirth. So they bring us into the, you know, these godlier realms, God realms, demigod realms, and the human realm.
What are the lower realms again? You cut off. I heard animals.
Oh, so you see here, do you see the white arrow that I've got going on there? Yeah. Yeah. So this is the animal realm.
Mm-hmm.
This is the hell realm. So, you know, even in, again, it's hard because air conditioning, we think, oh, hells, that doesn't exist, blah, 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 you know, especially if we're trying to like, we got fed up with Christianity and we heard all about, you know, in some cultures, you know, they talk about the hells and it feels very, very heavy. But again, if we're going from the premise, as the Buddha said, that we are the creator of our own reality, then we create the karma to have a hellish rebirth. You know, as we can see, even in the human realm, you know, there's many areas where people have a human body, but their life's an absolute hell, you know, mentally or within the environment. You know, so, but there are actually realms of existence where people, through the power of their karma delusion, get born in the hells. And this is the hungry ghosts. And you can see it's kind of the whole spirit realm, and there's a realm called hungry ghosts, and you're predominantly born over attachment to your own possessions and not able to have the mind of any kind of generosity. So it creates the cause for you to be born in these realms with big bellies and not having food and not being able to see any kind of food, water, or anything for long periods of time. It's just the karmic result of being miserliness, of being miserly. States, you know, and of course we see the animal realm already. Some people who have different karma often can see the hungry ghosts sometimes. There's been certain areas in the human realm, people are able to have seen experiences seeing hungry ghosts. And then the animal realm, you know, again, if we think about it more deeply, it is dominated by suffering, you know. Of course, the best animals are the pets, but predominantly they're not pets animals, you know. Most of them are, you know, living in the wild, living in the oceans, living in the skies, and just barely trying to get, you know, keep alive, you know. So this is just a bit of an idea. And the outer ring is really showing the 12 links of dependent origination, which is, again, is a more elaborate teaching, but just showing, at least in the first one at the top, it starts here. And this is showing, again, the fact that, like the blind man, we enter into every rebirth and then due to that, we create all this kind of evolution. But this is the blind man is showing this kind of mind of ignorance that creates, due to ignorance, being blinded, the natural wisdom, the natural clarity, pure awareness, or Buddha potential, you know, many different words to express that, is blinded by this kind of, this delusion of ignorance in the mind, this cloud. Making sense? Namaste. And then here, Mara is the Lord of Death. So this is what we call the Lord of Death, because we are under the control, we're bound, we're controlled, we're in the hooks of the Lord of Death. You know, so we're bound by uncontrolled death and rebirth right now. But again, and so the Buddha up here is showing that he has found the path to peace. He's out of that, you know, we're in here, he's up there. And he's, you know, he's showing us that there is a path to liberation. You know, the peace and enlightenment, and like the moon, you know, that can, when all our wisdom becomes illuminated, you know, like the moon, we have that ability to achieve that peaceful state, because he's like Buddha who's out of that. So that's what he's showing. Any questions, comments? Okay, so actually it's 8:25, right? Okay, well, what I wanted to do, but I think I lost the link. So what I might do is bring it up next week. I have just a few minutes of Rinpoche talking about, you know, what the purpose of life is, but I kind of somehow just before the class I lost it. So we'll maybe look at that at the start of the class next week. About another 10-15 minutes. So yeah, just moving on a little bit more with the cause of suffering, you know, just having a quick read through these points, you know. So a question was, yeah, just out of curiousness, does anyone feel that anger in any way is positive? Just curious, you know, doing, oh, well, you know, that person was really, you know, they really deserved it, or sometimes it is quite helpful to be angry, or, you know, I mean, I know we can sometimes say that in the experience when we have children, or we need to be really wrathful with someone. But do we feel, you know, that generally speaking, anger is something that we need to get rid of? We need to work on. Or do we feel like sometimes it's okay to be angry?
I mean, yeah, generally anger is not good. I think sometimes anger can stop bad habits. You know, you get to the point where you're fed up and you
Mhm.
know, you're done with it. But I think it's our reaction.
Yes.
That's the most important thing is, you know, how we react in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're talking more about when you get done with something, it's almost like you have an aversion to that, which that's okay. Aversion's a little bit different from anger. When it's because you can have a positive aversion to something. You can have an aversion to something that's not good for you. That's actually what we're trying to do in samsara. We're trying to see that these different types of suffering that we have is not good for us, and having a like, I don't want to have that anymore. That's a good aversion. Having an aversion to spiritual teachings, or I can't listen to this class again, or I can't do that meditate, that's not so good, you know. But there's positive aversion, just like there's positive doubt, you know. There's some of these things are quite positive. There's positive fear. When you get a fear of something that, you know, if you fear of working in a dangerous place, that's a positive thing, because maybe you don't know, if you can't see that it's safe, then it's better not to go there, you know. So there are positive fears, you know, as well. Like we say the fear of death is, after you meditate on death, to have a fear, not that one. You can have a fear of not being born in the lower realms. That's a positive fear, because then that fear inspires you to create the causes not to be born there, you know. So, but yeah, I think what you're saying, an aversion, that's okay. There's the other distinction between wrath. Oh, sorry, Bay, did you put your hand up? Yeah, Bay.
Yeah, so I think more of a question, because I know some people, they feel anger towards injustice is justified, and it's, you know, it's like the right thing. I don't know if it's the same anger in this context.
Well, anger is a disturbed state of mind. That's the bottom line, you know. So it's better to feel compassion towards injustice than anger.
Yeah, I mean, I was imagining like fascism, or, you know, like what Hitler's doing, you know, like if he was, you know, putting people in concentration camps and things like that. Like, is it okay to be angry at that? You know,
I mean, basically, you know, when we understand more deeply the evolution of our own samsara, that, you know, in reality, if we have beginningless lives, we've probably been there and done all that too. You know, we'll have been kings and queens, most virtuous at times, you know. And of course, it's terrible, you know. Even now, we see politicians that kind of, we understand you know, more deeply the nature of our own samsaric suffering, more deeply that this is one lifetime. We've had many, many lifetimes of suffering and dissatisfaction. And, you know, we've been all these kings and rulers and politicians, and we've had power, we've not had power, we've been lowly, we've been poor, we've been up and down. That's what the Buddha saw when he achieved enlightenment. He said there wasn't a time when we weren't. We've always had we didn't just be created out of nothing. We've always existed. So when we think more deeply about our own nature like that, we've probably been all these beings and creating this harm, because we've engaged or participated in some way in that before. And also when we think more deeply about somebody like Hitler, or, you know, some of our current leaders, you know, and what the karma they are creating. See, when we understand the evolution of karma more in ourselves, and we understand that every time they're creating a non-virtue, you know, like, you know, Hitler's an extreme example, but yeah, for every being he kills, he's going to have to experience the result of that for many, 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 many lifetimes. He's doing that out of complete delusion. And the karma he's creating is like unfathomable. This is a very small, you know, Hitler's already been and gone now. Where is he now? From the Buddhist perspective, he's going to be in the hell realms, you know. Just, even though we can't see it as Buddhas, but if you start to, that, you know, due to, due to that killing karma that he created, he was responsible, even if he didn't kill people directly, he was responsible for killing many beings. We see these politicians creating, ones that are not virtuous, lying, cheating, stealing. This is just, they have that power for a very short time, like lightning in the sky. Yes, it does affect us, it does impact us, but that's also due to the karma we've created in the past. Experience, many, many lifetimes of suffering and pain. So if we think about, and this is why we have to, it does take a lot of effort and time. We have to think really, really deeply about these teachings, because otherwise we just go into what we see, what's just on the surface. They're bad guys, they've done this, we don't think in a big level, a deep level, And that's what delusion does. It makes you just react in the moment to what's going on, because it doesn't allow us to see the whole evolution of what's going on. Our minds become very small in just what we see going on right now and what we want to label onto that right now, But if we think more deeply, it's like, these guys only have power for a small time, even if it's 10, 20, 30, if it's nothing, 40, it's not long. But they are going to suffer for many, many lifetimes. Whereas if I could practice patience, try to develop some compassion to really understand what it is they're creating for themselves, that's where we need to be in that situation. It doesn't mean that you just sit there and don't react and do, we can still react. I mean, like, you have got these holy beings like Martin Luther King and all that, they did a lot of action against injustice, but not with anger, with compassion and patience, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, Mike, the Tibetans are going through unbelievable hard time. Torture by the Chinese, their country, their culture, everything's been taken over and killed and destroyed. But His Holiness, his practice is patience. His practice is within the practice of patience and compassion. We try skillfully to change the situation. But again, what it says in Master Shantideva's, Shantideva, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, an incredible, beautiful text on developing, one of the aspects is developing patience, working on your anger. There's a whole chapter dedicated to that. If you can change the situation, why get angry? If you can't change the situation, why get angry? It's very profound, that, Make sense, Namasia? And ultimately, when we start to really, really feel anger in our own experience, how it damages and disturbs the mind, we don't want to have anger. We really want to work on it. Because the opposite anger is patience, is like an absence of anger. And when you have an absence of anger in the mind, there's much more peace. So respond in peace. And within that state of peace and patience, we have much more wisdom. As soon as you get angry, we can't focus and concentrate properly, It's because it's a disturbed state of mind. So no matter what injustice or whatever's going on, the answer is always to practice patience. And within that space, you'll have more wisdom to respond, and to act if there's a possibility to act. Because that's what the nature of mind is, pure, clean, clear wisdom. But we can only get to that through slowly, moving and purifying the delusions.
Yeah, the 8 verses talks a lot about anger.
Yeah, the 8 verses, it's a beautiful practice to remedy anger. All these practices are a remedy to the delusions. But as much patience, the more we practice, feel like, I don't want to get angry. It's like you have an aversion to your anger. That's a good aversion. It's like you push it, you want to push it away out of your mind, you have it's actually, it's kind of a hard one to wrap your head around, but it is. You can have an aversion to your anger, an aversion to your desire. And that's a strong mind that doesn't want to, it's protecting you from those states of mind. It's a wisdom mind. That aversion's a wisdom. So again, here, as I'm just making, attachment and anger rise from the ignorant mind that perceive. So that, again, going back to the real, well, actually, before we get there, this expression, which I know probably, well, maybe you've all seen it. Rinpoche, when, you know, I lived at Rinpoche's house in Aptos, we had the little car. Namasia, you've probably seen it, the little car that the nuns used to run around in.
The little yard.
It's still there. And there's, you know, Rinpoche has all these, just people have these, what do you call them? Not car stickers, bumper stickers, yeah? So Rinpoche, of course, comes to the West and he sees all these stickers on people's car. So he starts, you know, creating these bumper labels, or we don't put them on the bumper, we put them a little bit far up, you know, Dharma expressions. And it was really interesting because I'd drive around and people would say, oh, and of course, when you're in the car, then you have to be really careful because you've got all these, like, you know, no selfishness sayings, you know, that you should be upholding yourself. So one of them was on the side of the car, no, I mean, and I think we had added, if no anger, then no enemy. And I mean, that one's very, very profound, you know, it's a very deep meditation, you know, and that can be a big inspiration to really purify your mind, because it's true, it's that much we don't have anger in the mind, that much we don't perceive an enemy. But, you know, as soon as a little you know, when somebody bothers you, you know, and a little agitation comes up, I'm not talking about like masses of anger, I'm just talking even if somebody agitates you, how they change, you know, they become like this annoying bit, you know? This kind of, you know, the perception of a person, as soon as they agitate you or they don't, you know, fulfill your expectations, they change how they look, you know. We kind of, in a way, we label them enemy or difficult or challenging. I mean, you must have that every day, Namasia, with the kids, you know. I mean, it's not easy. Even, never mind anger, even just agitation changes how we see someone, how we label them in the mind, you know, and creates more of a distance, a harshness of how they appear to us. That's what anger does. Whereas we have love and kindness, we appreciate people, qualities, they appear nice. You know, they've a soft, harsh feel, you know, of people. And it creates a greater separateness from people, because it's a deluded state of mind.
Okay, I have a situation where I'm thinking that's making me angry. And so I live in the country and these rats have gotten into my garage and they're ruining everything, all of my school supplies. And I can't get rid of them. And now they're gotten into my car. Now they're in my car and my garage. And I can't kill them because you can't kill, you know. And so I mean, every day I wake up and they're just like ruining more and more things.
That's really difficult, yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling angry at these creatures and I don't know what to do, you know. And so it's like, that's an anger situation as I'm trying to put.
Yeah, no, it's very hard not to get, I mean, unless we sort of really kind of work on it, the immediate response is just to get upset and angry. I mean, it's my stuff, my space, my this, my, you know, and then that's intruding on you. And I mean, I know I had a experience as well, like in Aptos, there was a few times where this mice were getting in and the car wouldn't start because they were eating away at these wires. But fortunately, it's finished. But when it keeps going, it's very intense, you know. So I think the main thing in that situation is to feel, I mean, I would say is okay. And when I feel like Kainsagi, I always think, well, either way, getting angry doesn't help the situation. It just doesn't help. Just the immediate, whatever immediately helps you to just reduce the anger, that's the most important thing to start with. Because you getting angry is not, as it says in the Bodhisattva's Way, you know, if I can change the situation, why get angry? If I can't change the situation, why get angry? So in this situation, it's like, well, without getting angry, and also in the space of non-anger, we definitely can think more clearly usually. What to do. And it's true, you can't kill them. I don't know if there's any, is there any deterrence, you know, that you can find or have? There must be some kind of rat deterrence.
Yeah, I've been trying. I got the have a heart rat trap and they just know not to go in there.
Oh no.
Deterrence, and I'm just I mean, it's just the situation. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know I have a few friends who have that with their cars and everything, you know, as I did, and another one who had that. Eventually she found some deterrent. But, and the other thing we have to think about is we've created the karma for that, you know. It's not to beat ourselves up, but it's some level of acceptance that, you know, at the time to time, think, you know, we have created karma with other beings, and this is the karma now of I've obviously stolen for them in the past.
Mm.
I've taken for them in the past. And so the karma's ripening for me to be, basically they're stealing for you, you know, they're invading your space. And that comes from invading the space or, you know, taking that what doesn't belong to you in the past. So you're purifying that karma.
Mm.
That's something to feel happy about. You know, on one level, okay, I'm purifying this, but on the other level, if I'm able to do something about it, it would be better. But trying to do it within the space of non-anger. And that is the practice. That is the practice, you know.
Thank you.
Takes time. We're not going to be able to do it right away. Anyone else got anything to share with that? Urs or Bay? No?
Uh,
Yeah.
I guess I'm still curious if there could be like anger out of compassion, an act of anger. You know, maybe like you said, it's just like a manifestation of anger, but deep inside it's from compassion.
Well, there is like from the side of a Buddha, you know, I mean, of course we're not Buddhas, you know, but you could think about a mother as being a mother, you know. And I know being a mother's like one of the hardest, you know, it must be, or a school teacher, I can't imagine it must be really difficult, but you can say that's your place of practice, you know. So, but there is it's not anger, but it's wrath, you know, so it's a firmness. So it's like, you know, certainly in situations where you are dealing with kids, you know, it's not like you just be soppy, you can't be soppy all the time. But the best situation, so for a Buddha, they can manifest wrath. You see some of these wrathful deities, you know, the ones with like the eyes and that's what we call a wrath. It's this kind of very strong, frightening energy, you know, but but it's coming from compassion. It's coming for complete compassion. I mean, Buddhas no longer have any anger, you know, they're done with that. They've purified all that, you know. And even but there is this activity they do called wrathful activity. So they show the aspect of being really angry or upset or scary or terrifying, but they're completely peaceful in their mind. They have complete control over the mind, whereas with us, anger is an uncontrolled response. It's something that we're not able to, you know, we're not in control at that time. It just happens. It just flares up, you know.
And then create more karma, right?
Yeah, and you just create more contaminated karma, you know. So the one we eventually are able to do is what we call wrath, or even as a mother, just trying to be firm and strong, you know, it can be strong bells, but you're not angry. And I'm sure you've done that as a mother, you know. So at our level, we can do that. But we have to be very careful. And how you know you're getting angry is because the person starts to look like an enemy very quickly when the anger comes. Whereas if you love the person, but you're being firm, they don't never look like an enemy. It's like your kids, you know. You love them and you're being firm, but they're not your enemy, you know. Something like that, you know. So there's at our level, I think we're able to do the firmness. The wrath is too much because that we don't have the control, you know. We would soon lose. It would move into anger very quickly. Okay, I think we're at 9:15, probably. So we'll just carry on again next week, I guess, from where we took off. And any other last comments or questions? I just wanted to share this. I didn't get through all the material, but yeah, we'll just keep going. There's a little toy. So Rinpoche has these plush, Lama Zopa Rinpoche love to give Dharma toys to everyone, you know, to a lot of students. And he would write all these little sayings. So I thought every week I might just try and remember and share a little saying in one of the toys, you know. So this one's very sweet, you know. So it's just a little bit of lightness at the end of the class after all that suffering, you know. So because the main thing, you know, one of the parts that we definitely want to enjoy, we want to develop in our path, we need to develop a sense of joy, you know. We need to know the entirety of our situation, but within that, we need to develop joy and aspiration, and, you know, that's all the other factors and qualities that we want to, you know, develop, you know. So Rimshi used to give these toys, I think, because sometimes as Westerners, we can get very heavy with ourselves. So the toy sort of lightens it up, you know, it gives a softness. We do need to develop these things, but we can do it in a sort of joyful way too, you know.
I'll think of that for the rats as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, so I want to achieve enlightenment for the rats too. Yeah. So let's just take a moment to just dedicate. So we usually say, due to these merits and the merits of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all sentient beings, so we bring all our positive energy together, and all sentient beings positive. Discover more deeply the level of my own suffering, these different types of suffering within my own mind and my own experience. The suffering of change, suffering of suffering, all pervasive suffering. May be able to continually develop meditation them in my own inner world, my own experience, and develop this strong wish, this wish of renunciation, to free myself from suffering. And of course, that much more we see the continuity of suffering in our own experience, that much more we develop compassion and kindness and love for ourselves. And that much more we develop it for others. So by understanding my own evolution of suffering and gradually freeing myself from that, may I be able to have more and more kindness and compassion for others, as I understand they're, like me, they're in this evolution of suffering. But like me, they have this deep potential for everlasting peace and happiness. So I dedicate for all beings to awaken this potential within themselves, the everlasting peace and happiness, up to the fully enlightened state of Buddha. Gewadi nyudu lama sange drugyurne drowa jigyang malupa deye sala goparsho. Due to these merits, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Sorry, I'll get that prayer up next week as well, so you can read it together. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie.
Angie.
Goodbye.
Enjoy your week.
Right, you too.